children are here, and we drove our children into a lot of work, and we've never had CPS called on us for child labor or anything, but our son Jonah is here, our 2-year-old, our 14-year-old Ella, who helps a lot too, and then so I just thought I would do that. Okay, so I want to start with, for those of you who are new to MAVEN, the first question we always get about MAVEN is, what the heck does MAVEN mean, right? What does this word mean? So if you don't know, I'll define it for you. MAVEN is a person who has an expertise or knowledge in something and wishes to pass that on. And so we loved that name. We thought it represented so well the vision for what we wanted to do. Did it just get louder? Yes. It sure did. I don't know what I did. Okay. So as I said, we started MAVEN almost 5 years ago. And Brett and I started it because, for one thing, we love the church. And we love the local church. We love our local church. We are invested in the local church, and we see the local church as the way to reach people. And so we wanted to come alongside the local church in any way we can. Also, we started MAVEN because we love young people and the next generation. And that's really the heartbeat of MAVEN. So half of what we do is geared towards young people, like the students who are here tonight. But the other part of what we do, and another reason we started MAVEN, is because we know that the people who disciple the young people, if we can help equip them, we're reaching even more young people than we could ever do by taking them on trips and doing conferences and things. So our heart is really for parents and grandparents and pastors and youth pastors and teachers and every one of us who have young people in our life and are wanting to disciple and equip them. And so that's really the heartbeat of MAVEN and why we do what we do. And to know what we do, Brett's going to talk about that right now. So I get to introduce Brett. So I have a microphone to myself without him on another microphone, which is quite unusual. So how much do you want to know about the guy before I bring him up? No. So I'll tell you a few things about Brett, all the things he's done and couldn't possibly have done without me, but I will tell you all the things that he has done. So he's the father of our 5 children, so we'll start there. We're about to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary in June. Career-wise, he's the associate editor of the Apologetic Study Bible. What's wrong? You're looking at me funny. Oh, the video's not working? Oh. Okay. Okay, sorry. After I introduce Brett, we're going to show you a video. I messed up. Okay, sorry. Okay, what was I saying? Okay. Oh, all the things Brett couldn't have done without me. That's what I was saying. Okay, so he's the associate editor of the Apologetic Study Bible for Students. He's authored the Bastard Guide to Mormonism. He co-authored A Practical Guide to Culture, helping the next generation navigate today's world. And he also co-authored the book to go along with that, which is A Student's Guide to Culture. And actually, I'm teaching right now in the co-op that Jonah and Ella and I go to together, and I teach the apologetics logic class for the junior high and high school students. So I'm taking my students through the Student's Guide to Culture actually right now, and I keep coming home and saying, Uncle, you did a good job with this book. It's pretty good. He went to Biola University, which is actually where him and I met. He got a degree in Christian education, and then he went on to get his degree from Talbot School of Theology in philosophy of religion. So That is Brett, and I was going to invite him up, but I messed up. So we have a short video that you're going to watch about Maven, and then Brett will come up.
The culture is speaking to our kids every single day. It's talking to them about gender identity, love and sexuality, pornography, casual sex, money, possessions, and the good life, abortion, God, religion, morality, politics, atheism, secularism, relativism, and what they should believe about all of it. But the vast majority of the cultural conversation stands in stark opposition to the truth of God's Word. Are our kids ready for these conversations? Sadly, most are not. They don't know what they believe, why they believe it, or why it even matters. As a result, the lies of the culture overwhelm the faith of our young people. Eventually, many walk away from God and the church. We are losing our kids to the culture. So what are we to do? Hide? Give up? Give in to despair? Never. For those of us who follow Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life, despair is not an option. Why? Because no cultural lie and no cultural challenge will ever put Jesus back in the grave. Our only option is hope, because 2,000 years ago, Jesus walked out of a tomb. We serve a risen Savior, and therefore, we are absolutely convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, nor the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. So now, more than ever, we must redouble our efforts. We must never stop shining the bright light of God's truth, goodness, and beauty into an increasingly dark culture for the sake of our kids, for the sake of the next generation. And thankfully, we're not alone in this mission. We have allies. That's why MAVEN exists. Our mission is to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty, all for the cause of Christ. And we equip those who teach and train the next generation, parents, grandparents, youth workers, pastors, and educators, to do the same. We envision a new generation of young Christians taken captive by God's truth, their entire worldview formed and informed by God's Word, and resisting the lies of the culture. Not only do they know God's truth, but their lives are also transformed by it. They live it out in whatever God calls them to be, as artists, musicians, business owners, doctors, nurses, politicians, lawyers, pastors, missionaries, entrepreneurs, in every single area of their lives. Yes, the culture will keep speaking to our kids, but so must we. Truth, goodness, beauty, Jesus.
My wife reminded me that I need to set a timer for tonight because this doesn't end at 11:30. Is that correct? So I want to make sure I only leave my comments for about an hour here. No, what I want to do is unpack that video, that 3-minute video, unpack that a little bit more. Because currently we live in some interesting cultural times, don't we? This is an interesting cultural moment. It's a very challenging cultural moment. And here's the question I want you to think about. And this is not just thinking about this question for the next generation, but also for us as well. And here's the question. How does culture most powerfully shape us? How does culture most powerfully shape us? I want to use a number of analogies tonight, I think, to help us understand some of the concepts that we're going to talk about here. I want you to think about the culture we live in like an ocean, right? And we live in culture. We live in this ocean of culture. And so just by living in a culture, you get wet. You get wet with the culture's values. You get wet with the culture's ideas and beliefs. And then we splash that wetness on each other and we influence each other. And I think the most powerful way that the culture shapes us is simply by presenting to us that which is normal. So it doesn't even have to be a very clear, explicit arguing for a certain position, right? Or advocating for a position. It simply presents to us what is normal, and we swim in that, and we absorb that, and then we take it to be normal as well. And I think this is the most powerful way that culture shapes us. It also can be the most insidious way that culture shapes us. Here's what C.S. Lewis says. It says, the most dangerous ideas in a society are not the ones being argued, but the ones that are assumed. And there's a whole host of ideas that are being assumed in our culture. Of course, some call the current moment that we're in the transgender moment, right? I mean, have you looked around the culture over the last couple of years and just kind of been maybe dizzied by the speed at which our culture has gotten to this moment, particularly when it comes to the issue of gender identity? Right? And I think for those of us who are older, and even the generations above me, I mean, this is like a foreign world to many of us, right? But I want you to see this played out, this idea that the culture is just presenting this as normal and it's shaping an entire generation. Just think about entertainment. Let's look at some different spheres. And so we're just going to take the T in the acronym, right? LGBTQA+++. We're just going to take that T. All right, what do we see in the realm of entertainment? So in entertainment, what's happened? Well, this was big news last year. You had actress Ellen Page, right, transition very publicly and become Elliot Page. And I don't know if you saw or read her interview with Oprah. You can go on YouTube and just maybe do a search for Elliot and Oprah, and you can see the interview. But she made a very public transition from a woman to Elliot. And so this is, you know, in the world of entertainment, this was big news. Your kids, my kids, or maybe even you or me, maybe you've seen on Netflix things like this. Drag Kids. This is just one example of many examples of the different shows that are available on streaming platforms, on even network, major networks. Drag Kids, where they follow and they just kind of do a documentary on these young elementary age kids who are now doing drag. And it's so hard to keep up with all this. I just saw another commercial for another documentary about young boys doing drag. How many of you saw last summer during Pride Month the commercial, the animated commercial that was put on YouTube from the Cartoon Network for the show Blue's Clues? Did you see this? Let me show you this commercial that the Blue's Clues YouTube channel put on for our young kids.
Hey, Blue, look at all these families. Hi, families. It's time for a pride parade. Families marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. Families marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. This family has two mummies. They love each other so happy, and they all go marching in the big parade. Families marching two by two, hurrah, hurrah. Families marching two by two, hurrah, hurrah. This family has two daddies. They love each other so proudly, and they all go marching in the big parade. Come on, friends. Families marching three by three.
watch the original video, it goes all the way up to 10. It counts all the way to 10. So you're welcome. I didn't play the entire video. Right? Because what it offers is kind of 10 different radical revisioning of the family. And now think about who this is targeted at. Blue's Clues is a show that is targeted to 2 to 5-year-olds. Right? And in fact, there's later on in the video, there's a beaver who's a trans individual in this family, and it seems that in this animated feature, the beaver has scars from a double mastectomy as a trans individual. I mean, so this is just presented as normal, right? When you see headlines like this, of course, Disney's been in the headlines very recently for their programming and just kind of leaked video of different Disney executives talking about what they want to put into not just the entertainment, but just across the board in the Disney world of theme parks and movies and really being all about kind of the LGBTQ activism. Right, so this is just some examples of just one area, entertainment, but it's not confined to entertainment. You have education. Education is another realm where this is being presented as normal. Here, what we have, we're getting actually a very good glimpse from teachers themselves and educators themselves who are in an age of social media have been happy to post themselves of their interactions and their ideas about how to teach and train the next generation. Here's an example of a New York Public School middle school teacher posting on TikTok.
So I just came out to my students. I've been wanting to do this for the past 2 years. Sorry, I'm like so emotional. And I just haven't had the courage to do it out of fear of judgment, mostly from their parents. But I have these kids in 4th grade, and now I have them in 6th, and I'm sending them to middle school, and I love these kids so much, and I trust them, and they make me feel safe, and I know they love me, and it just felt right, and I did it, and it was so beautiful. They had so many questions, which I loved. They wanted to learn, and they wanted to learn about me, and they were so eager, and a few of them clapped, which was so precious.
So there's a number of things we can say about this. I'm going to save the analysis. I just want to present to you what is out there. And I have maybe 100 clips like this of teachers on my laptop that I've just been collecting. I can't keep up with it. You know, you have a parent who tweeted this just, this is about March 24th, 3 or 4 weeks ago. I guess we're at the end of April now, time flies. A month ago, this dad tweets out, my son's 1st grade assignment from yesterday. Right, and so you've got gender, and this is now education, girl, boy, neither. Well, here's the pronouns that you use. Of course, maybe, how many of you are familiar with the gender unicorn? Is anyone familiar with the gender unicorn? This is a tool that's in various curriculums for, what age demographic do you think this is for? It's not the high schoolers, this is for the elementary kids, where they use the gender unicorn to talk about issues like trans issues and non-binary issues and these kinds of things. Just a couple weeks ago during Trans Visibility Week, there was all kinds of posting from educators. Here's an educator, this is a teacher, this is a kindergarten teacher in a St. Louis public school talking about and posting about how she read to her kindergartners a book on pronouns, okay? This is a video from I think this is last year. This is a First grade teacher, talking about how she uses a stuffed animal to teach her kids about.
This year, I decided to ditch Elf on the Shelf, so I want you to meet Remy the Respectful Reindeer. Remy isn't tied to Santa Claus or Christmas, and he decided to start us off with a story to give us a hint as to why they're in our class this year. Remy loves the book They, She, He, Easy as ABC because it's a fun, easy way to introduce littles to pronouns. After the story, Remy played a trick on us and tried to have us guess the pronouns that they prefer. But Remy quickly corrected us and helped us learn not to make assumptions about people just based off of what they look like, because our pronouns are all about what we feel inside. So, Remy had us practice asking, Remy, what are your pronouns? Together, we learned that our new friend Remy prefers they, them pronouns. My littles were so excited that Remy was feeling safe and welcome in our class too.
Okay, so there's another example of a teacher teaching about pronouns and gender identity and these kinds of things. And now I think a lot of us might look at that and we might say, well, why teach about that in an to first graders or kindergartners? What does that have to do with education? Well, for many educators, it has everything to do with education. This is Judy Chiozon from the LA Unified School District, and she is the program coordinator for LA Unified in their Office of Human Relations, Diversity, and Equity. And so she's responsible for designing programs for over 600,000 students in LA Unified. And I want you to listen carefully to what she says. Here's what she says. She says the role of schools has changed. Technically, we are an educational institution, right? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Technically, that's what we are. But schools have expanded to be the hub for a lot more social services and looking more holistically, emotionally at what's going on with children. Looking at schools as a source of social justice. Our role continues to expand. The outreach now is profound. We're going to come back to this quote because I want you to really understand what she's saying here and why this makes complete sense that this stuff would be taught even to elementary school kids. So that's education. Well, how about social media? We see social media, our young people, I mean, the average Gen Zer, so kind of 22 and younger. Average Gen Zer is in front of a screen 6 to 9 hours a day, typically. And a lot of that time's on social media. So what's being presented as normal on social media? Well, here's one example on TikTok.
Hi, my name is John. You might know me as Chef John Kung, and my pronouns are they and he. TikTok has added pronouns and profiles, allowing all of us to refer to one another with ease, specificity, and care. So this is how you can add pronouns to your profile. For this feature, you'll want to head to the Edit Profile section of your TikTok page. There you'll see an option to add your pronouns in between your username and bio sections. You'll get to select up to 4 pronouns from a list of options. Once you've added your pronouns, they'll show up on your profile, right at the top, under your name and a letter. Feel free to use whatever feels most authentic to you and your identities.
Okay, so TikTok gets this influencer, probably has about 1.5 million followers. And what does he do? He's introducing this feature on TikTok where you can kind of give your preferred pronouns, right? You see this on Facebook as well. Facebook gives you, it's hard to keep up. It used to be like 56 different options when it came to your gender identity. I think who knows where we're at now. Just a couple of weeks ago, I got on LinkedIn. Maybe many of you are on LinkedIn for business purposes or networking purposes. And as I got on LinkedIn, this little window popped up right here. I don't know if you can see it, I circled it there. What popped up? Well, just a little box that says show your pronouns on your profile to let others know how to refer to you. Now, I just want you to see what's going on. For many people, they're like, well, what's the big deal about this? It's just being presented as normal at every single turn. So, entertainment, education, social media, even big business is in on this, right? And so you have Oreo cookies a tweet like this: trans people exist. You can go to Uber's website. Uber has a Pride site, and here's an example of some of the content that's on the Pride site for Uber, right? 5 ways to speak inclusively. Well, what does that have to do with Uber? Well, maybe, this is training for their drivers, right? They offer this as training for their drivers. Number one, avoid gender greetings, right? Hello, ma'am. Hello, sir. That's out. You don't want to assume. Number two, don't assume cis heteronormative relationships. Okay? Even what you're seeing now in places like Target or other stores, just notice. Notice either pins, separate pins with pronouns, or even the store, the business's official name tag, where they're now giving employees options on their pronouns. Children's businesses, businesses that target children are part of this as well, where Lego put out their first LGBTQ set for children. Royal Dutch Airlines did a tweet recently. Well, this is actually like 2 years ago on celebration of Pride, right? Which this one was. This is ironic. Now, there is humor here, right? There is humor, but I want to point out. Now, I don't put this up to mock it, but as an illustration, because I've talked to so many Christians who are disheartened over these kinds of issues, and I think one thing to say, just as an encouragement, is that reality is on our side. If Christianity is an accurate description of reality, then reality is on our side. And this is a great example that illustrates that. Because there are a couple of those, seatbelt configurations that don't work. And that's the nature of reality when it comes to human sexuality. And then they eventually got so much pushback from people to this tweet, they took it down. But it does, I think it illustrates that our culture is willing to affirm things that are entirely illogical and go against reality. And so there, obviously there's some of these things that we just can't help but laugh about. But at the same time, it's appropriate for us to mourn them as well. Because people who buy into the lies of the culture will be hurt. I might kind of cruise through this one a little bit faster because there's just so much. Okay, government. There's another issue. Example, government. So you have Texas candidate for governor just posted this in the last month, wearing a shirt, "Don't mess with trans kids." I don't know if you saw this. This is a video from the United States Air Force. Now, I took the audio out on this one, but it was a video to celebrate International Women's Day. Women's History Month. And who did they feature? They feature a trans woman, a biological male, for a celebration of Women's History Month. Okay? Yeah, I don't know if you saw this, but just a few weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal reported that U.S. passports will now offer an X gender marker.
Yeah.
And then our president, on Trans Visibility Day, put out this message.
Everyone celebrating Transgender Day at the school. I want you to know that the President sees you. Jill, Colin, Doug, our entire administration sees you for who you are. Made in the image of God that deserve dignity, respect, and support. And we know it's hard. And there are those out there that don't see you, don't respect you. For example, the onslaught of anti-transgender state laws attacking you and your family is simply wrong. This administration is standing up for you against all these hateful bills. And we're committed to advancing transgender equality in the classroom, on the playing field, at work, and on military, in our housing and healthcare system, everywhere, simply everywhere. Today, we're announcing even more steps. There's always more work to do. To end the epidemic of violence against transgender women of color and girls of color. To ensure transgender seniors can age with dignity, and finally pass a bipartisan equality act. To help transgender persons around the world live free from discrimination and violence. Above all, to be there. To parents of transgender children, affirming your child's identity is one of the most powerful things you can do to keep them safe and healthy. Any transgender American who's struggling, please know you're not alone. Parents and children alike, please ask for help. And know this, you're so brave, you belong, and we have your back. God bless you all.
Okay, so I put that up as another example from government, and again, we could spend the rest of the night going through all the examples. What's going on here in our culture? What has happened? What has happened is that every sphere, almost every institution is now simply presenting to our young people what should be normal. This is what's normal. Use your preferred pronouns. This is what's normal. Your gender is determined by what, how you feel, some internal feeling. And this is, you see, this is how culture powerfully shapes us. What's the result? Here's the result. What we find now is that there are more Gen Zers, right, born 1997 to 2003, many of our own kids, in that generation of Generation Z, there are more who self-identify as LGBTQ than any other generation by far. Just look at the numbers. The traditionalists, so those of you born before 1946, I won't identify you publicly, but for those of you born before 1946, it's less than 1% who would even identify as LGBTQ. The baby boomers in here is 2.6% for your generation. Gen Xers, 4.2%. There was a bump in the millennials, more than double the Gen Xers at 10.5%, and then we see that double with the Gen Zers. Right? What's going on? It's just been presented more and more as normal, and is it having an impact? Absolutely. It's shaping a generation. I just saw this tweet today. This was a gal who tweeted, a pediatric anesthesiologist just told me that pediatric gender reassignment surgeries are increasingly popular these days. I asked who approves. The parents and the surgeon, I'm told, right? And so I saw that. Now, then I saw this other guy retweet that. Aaron Baer retweets that. And now this is what he says, and I'm trying to get confirmation on this. He says, an Ohio pediatrician told me today a 5-year-old boy at their hospital was having his penis and testicles removed because the doctors and parents said he was born in the wrong body. Right? I wish we had media in Ohio that was willing to investigate these clinics. This is a horror show. Now, I want to confirm this, but even if it's not 5-year-olds, this is happening to 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds. Right? So these ideas that are presented as normal aren't harmless ideas. Ideas have consequences. And they're going to have a whole host of consequences for our younger generation. Now, what I've just covered is the T in the acronym. I mean, we haven't talked about any of the other issues that the culture is speaking to our young people on. So you could take any one of the areas of human sexuality, whether it's same-sex marriage or pornography or casual sex or gender identity or any of those things. But those are just some of the things that the culture is talking about. Then the culture offers us a view of the good life. What's the good life? It's pleasure and materialism and consumerism and right, everything that you see when you follow that famous influencer on Instagram. And so there's voice after voice after voice in arena after arena after arena where the culture is speaking and presenting to our young people that which should be normal. And so we get messages like this. Got this message from a dad. He said, I'm not a pastor nor in ministry. I'm a 53-year-old dad whose 25-year-old son, my best friend, told me 2 years ago he didn't believe in God anymore. That conversation changed my life. The same kid grew up in a Christian home, Christian school, vibrant church, fantastic youth group, and went on more than 10 impactful mission trips at home and abroad. How could this have happened? We are not immune here in the Bible Belt. His dad's from Tennessee. And gosh, you would ask a lot of Christian families or pastors, hey, how do I disciple my kid? This might be it right here when he's just laid out. And even after all that Christian activity, what happens? His son walks away. And many of us are seeing a whole generation, right, walk away from the Christian faith they grew up in. I hear it more and more all the time when I travel and speak. Now, some of you are sitting there going, wow, I came here for this. It is sobering news. It's sobering news. And, part of our job at MAVEN is to pay close attention to the culture, and I'll tell you, it's a difficult job. But the reason I want to share this is because I think we in the church, those of us who follow Christ, have got to wake up. We have got to wake up. And I know it's difficult living in comfortable Orange County. Right? I get it. I'm in this culture here, which presents all kinds of things that are normal, that try to shape me. But we have got to wake up because we're losing a generation of young people to what is simply being presented as normal. But there's something that's deeper that's going on. And if we're going to wake up, then we've got to figure out, well, what are we going to do? And I want to kind of spend a little time talking about what's going on a little bit deeper. And there's an author, columnist, Rod Dreher, who wrote a piece. And here's your homework tonight. This is one of your bits of homework, is to look up, do a Google search for sex after Christianity, Rod Dreher. He wrote an article in 2013 before the Obergefell same-sex marriage decision. And this is what he said. I think it's very insightful and it really gets at what's at the root here. He says, gay marriage is not just a social revolution, but a cosmological one. What does he mean by this? He says, too many Christians think that same-sex marriage is merely a question of sexual ethics. They fail to see that gay marriage and the concomitant collapse of marriage among poor and working-class heterosexuals makes perfect sense given the autonomous individualism sacralized by modernity and embraced by contemporary culture. Indeed, by many who call themselves Christians. They are fighting the culture war moralistically, not cosmologically. They have not only lost the culture, but unless they understand the nature of the fight and change their strategy to fight cosmologically, within a few generations, they may also lose their religion. Now, what is Dreher saying here? Just take that word cosmologically and replace it with worldview. He's saying this is not just an issue of morals or ethics. This is not just a battle of that. It goes deeper. It goes to the level of worldview. And if we don't change the nature of our fight, so it's not enough to kind of go and advocate for legislation on some particular moral issue. There's a deeper issue. It's a worldview issue. In fact, this is what Francis Schaeffer said 20 years ago. Or, no, 30 years ago. No. 40, you guys are old. 40 years ago, I think it was in 82 when he wrote Becoming an Evangelical Disaster. And he talks about this being a worldview issue. What do we mean by worldview? Worldview, we mean simply our picture of reality. Worldview is just simply your picture of reality. And what I want to unpack a little bit is how this is so absolutely vital to the church. Now, so I'm going to give you two analogies here to help you understand kind of the function of worldview for us. All right, imagine the contents of our mind, our beliefs, our ideas, our values. Okay, they're represented by individual puzzle pieces. If we poured all of those puzzle pieces onto a table, most American minds are going to kind of look like a jumbled mess of puzzle pieces, right? Because we haven't carefully thought about our worldview. Now, what careful worldview thinking can do is it can take and create a coherent picture of reality. So when you take those individual puzzle pieces, you start putting them together, what does it form? It forms a picture, right? And it makes sense of the individual puzzle pieces. Now think about it, for those of you who do puzzles, what are two things that can really derail your attempts to finish a puzzle off? Missing pieces. So you got a missing piece, you're not going to be able to complete that puzzle. You're not going to get a full picture of what's going on there. And so in terms of our worldview, there's many of us inside of the church as well as outside of the church who have missing pieces in their worldview. This is why when I talk to young people, they have no idea why you older people get upset about the tea issue. Because they just want to love their friends, and isn't that what God calls us to do, right? And so they've got some missing pieces. And so they look at this kind of tea piece, like, well, what's wrong with you guys? Now, what's the other thing that can kind of derail you? Well, sometimes when we do puzzles at home, we'll do several puzzles, and then the kids will put the puzzles away, and what happens? Yeah, the pieces get mixed up. And so then sometimes you get the wrong piece, and you're trying to figure out how it fits into your puzzle, and it doesn't. And I think that's the other problem when it comes to our worldview. We've got Christians who have wrong puzzle pieces in their view of reality. And this is why a Christian can say, yeah, I follow Jesus, and I think the Bible is the authoritative Word of God, and yet I'm LGBTQ affirming. And my argument there, they've got a missing puzzle piece then, right? Or they've got the wrong piece in place. And so, worldview thinking helps us, just like to put together the pieces of the puzzle of reality. Now, what are the big questions here in any worldview? The big questions are origin, identity, meaning, morality, and destiny. All right. And for those of you, anyone who wants these notes, what we'll do is I'll turn this into a PDF, and I will email all of this to you. Okay. So I'll send that to you. But these are the 5 big worldview questions. Any worldview that's going to adequately give us a picture of reality and explain the world around us is going to have to answer these 5 key questions. Now, let's go back to that puzzle analogy. Think about it. If you're going to put together a puzzle, where do you start? Right, the edges, the corners. Now, why do you do that? Because when you start to put together the edges and the corners, what it creates is a frame or a framework for all the other pieces to fit inside. In fact, it's much easier once you get that frame to then put the other pieces in. Imagine if you started with the very center piece and then worked your way out. How difficult would that be? What a worldview can do when you answer these 5 big questions is it can take and create a frame for all the individual pieces. So we have all these individual pieces out there in life. So whether it's gender or family or sexuality or technology or money or politics, education, career, and on and on and on. All of those pieces, how do we make sense of those individual pieces? Because I think that's one of the reasons we've been so ineffective. Is because the gender piece comes up and we go and we just deal with the gender piece in isolation of the larger framework. And so our young people hear, well, that's not good. Or because the Bible tells me so, and it's not adequate. It's absolutely not adequate. And so what we need is a framework that will make sense of the pieces inside. This is what worldview thinking does. You answer the questions of origin, identity, meaning, morality, and destiny according to the Christian worldview, and what you do is you create a framework that will make sense of all of the pieces inside. And it'll help to start creating a coherent whole. okay? Now, I'm just going to skip a couple slides, okay? Look, some of you might think, wow, this sounds really academic. Well, it can be. It's also Christian. Think what Paul says in Romans 12:2. This is a passage of scripture that we love to quote to our young people in youth group. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by developing close emotional feelings for Jesus. Right? Of course, that's not what Paul says here. And if you're familiar with the book of Romans, this is an important chapter. This is like a pivotal chapter where he's made a big argument in 1 through 11. And now he's going to throw down some really important things here. And what does he choose to elevate in our spiritual transformation? Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. This is why worldview training is so vital, because it is an important key to renewing our minds and renewing the minds of the next generation. Like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I look at myself, or I look at my fellow believers and or the church, and sometimes you look and you see the ugliness, right? But sometimes you think, gosh, shouldn't there be just maybe a little more transformation from people who claim to be indwelt by God's Spirit? And I wonder, a big part of it is we have short-circuited our own spiritual transformation because of our American Christian anti-intellectual bent. We don't renew our minds with God's truth. And worldview thinking and training is so key towards that end. And here's what we find. When you look at the data on Gen Z, what we discover is that we've got worldview issues with Gen Z. Teens 13 to 18 years old are twice as likely as adults to say they are atheists. So atheism has doubled under Gen Zers. And of course, what's going to follow with that? There are going to be other pieces of the puzzle that get answered. So when it comes to sexual morality, right? Homosexual behavior is morally wrong. Only 20% of Gen Zers would affirm that, the far minority. Half of Gen Z agrees that happiness is my ultimate goal in life. Look, we're not even have time to get into the issues of depression and anxiety and the mental health disorders that our young people are struggling with. But part of the reason is because this is what gives them meaning. And it's not the proper view of reality. And all of this goes back to worldview. The percentage of people with a biblical worldview declines in each generation, from boomers at 10% down to 4% in Gen Z. It's a worldview issue. And that's why when you hear MAVEN's mission statement, it's our way of saying we need to recapture the Christian worldview. And the way we put it is, MAVEN exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ, and to equip those who teach and train them, parents, youth, workers, pastors, and educators, to do the same. Know truth, pursue goodness, create beauty for us captures the idea that all truth is God's truth. And that the Christian worldview is the truth about all reality, and that is what we need to equip our young people with. Now, what are the two main prime institutions that God has given us to do this? Number one, family, right? Family is the primary place where we ought to raise the next generation. And then what's the second institution? Right? The church. The church is the second institution that God gave us. So family and the church are the primary disciples of the next generation. It's family primarily, and then the church as a powerful and strong ally. Now, MAVEN is a 501c3. We're not the church. We never will be the church. We don't ever want to be the church. We don't ever want to replace the church. We see our role as coming alongside the church. And right now, in this cultural moment, a lot of churches that are struggling. Right? Look, as Aaron said, the church is God's plan A, and there's no plan B. All right. So we want to come alongside the church and families to help them equip their young people with the Christian worldview. And let me give you some specifics on how we do that. Number one, our first strategy is virtual training. And you kind of think of it as a funnel, right? Our virtual training, the resources we put online, it's kind of the widest net to throw out there, where we can have an impact on people, not only in the States, but outside of the States as well. And then there are live events that we do. And those, of course, are a smaller audience, but it's a more personal touch. It may be more involved. And then thirdly, immersive experiences, which is kind of for us getting towards the end of the funnel. So let me just kind of highlight some of the things that we're doing in each of those three areas. Of course, when it comes to our virtual training, I would encourage you, if you're not familiar with Maven, you can go to our website, which is maventruth.com, and find out some of the resources that we offer there. But really one of the big things that we're trying to do right now is coach those who are the primary disciples of our young people. And that's why Aaron and I have really put a lot of effort, week in and week out, doing the Maven Parent Podcast to help coach the next generation, the parents of the next generation. And so we have been putting out regular podcasts, which we think is they're unique in how we're training parents. We're not just saying, parents, okay, discipline, all right, here's the three things you do. The first thing we're doing is saying, hey, what is the Christian worldview when it comes to discipline? What is the biblical truth when it comes to education or whatever issue a parent is facing? And so we're thinking carefully about it, and then what we're trying to do is marry that to good practical steps that flow out of good thinking and worldview thinking. And so the response has been great and encouraging. We got this email recently from Sarah, who was a parent in, she's a parent in Canada. And she said this, she said, thank you for your parenting podcast right now. I'm so overwhelmed in parenting, but your podcast has helped me realize it's doable. Thanks with all my heart for all you do. And so that's one way that we're trying to coach parents and invest in parents in order for the parents then to invest in the next generation. There's a second podcast that we're involved with. Aaron in particular is partnered with the Colson Center. And so we look around and say, hey, who can we partner with to do good work? And the Colson Center, if you're not familiar with them, get familiar with their work. They're an ally, a worldview ally in this. But Aaron and Sarah Stone Street have been doing the Strong Women podcast, which has been a great partnership between Maven and the Colson Center to really lay out what's a biblical view, a biblical worldview of womanhood. Because the culture is actually erasing the definition of womanhood. We need to recapture the beauty of God's design for women and blast that out into the world, because that alone can be attractive. And so they just, this last month, had almost 50,000 downloads. And that's not just, that doesn't actually capture all that are listening. That's just the downloads. So we're having an impact there. The second thing that we do are our live events. We do our annual MAVEN conference in the end of kind of winter every year. And so we just got done with our 4th annual MAVEN conference. If you haven't been to the MAVEN, you need to be there. It is, I think, a conference kind of like no other. That's the feedback we consistently get. Like, I don't get this at any other conference I go to. So I want to encourage you, save the date, the last Friday and Saturday of next February, to come and get equipped with Christian thinking on some of the most important, pressing issues that we're facing and our young people are facing. Okay. Live events also includes speaking that Aaron and I are doing, and right now it feels a little bit weird. Hey, we're talking about what we're doing. Well, of course, we started the ministry. Our goal, though, is we sure hope that the Lord provides more partners in some of this, because I'm constantly turning down events because I just can't fit them into my calendar. There's just too much, and it kills me because the need is so great. And so there are live events that we do, and just in the short 4.5 years that Maven's been in existence, we have spoken to over 25,000 students all across the U.S. I was just counting up the number of states that we've been in now, and it's over 22 states, not including Canada, and we've also been to New Zealand and elsewhere. And we've done 5 now MAVEN conferences in those 4.5 years, 1 student conference, 4 adult conferences. And we're just trying to equip the church. And then the last thing that we do is our Immersive Experiences, which is really for young people. We have 3 of these. An Immersive Experience for us is really kind of a worldview mission trip. We have one that focuses on worldview, one that focuses on apologetics, and one that focuses on the country. We've done these in New York. We've done them in Washington, D.C. We've done them in Arizona, in Southern California, Northern California, Utah. And what we're trying to do, what we've realized, is that the typical training at the typical youth group doesn't cut it anymore. Our kids are growing up in a way different culture. We have got to do so much more than we used to do. Like what worked 15 years ago doesn't work now. And so we've got to take it to the next level in terms of the training. And basically what we're trying to do on these trips is do some really good training, but then get young people out there in the real world engaging with these things. So, for instance, we go to Utah, we train kids. This is an opportunity for us to help our kids know what they believe. Because most of our kids don't know what they believe, beyond a couple of Christian cliches. And so we want to help them know theology and doctrine. And so what do? We train them and we take them to Utah and we let them get beat up by Mormons. Okay? And I'll tell you, there is nothing that motivates a young person like talking to a Mormon who seems to know the Bible better than they do. And then they come back to us and they say, hey, can you show me some things here? And can you help me study? And they stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning, studying Scripture, studying theology, because they know they're going out the next day to talk to more Mormons on BYU's campus. Right? We do an apologetics trip where we teach young people apologetics, why we believe what we believe. Not just what we believe, but why we believe it. What's the powerful evidence that tells us this stuff is actually true? It's not a fairy tale. And then we take them to places like Berkeley. Right? And we have atheists who are not in cages. They're live. And they come and they engage our young people. And our young people learn how to treat those people as image bearers. And how to treat them with dignity and respect as they share the truth with them in very intelligent ways. And then we have a little view trip where we take them and we help them see how their Christian faith is relevant to every single area of life. So they meet with artists. They meet with movie makers. They meet with business people. They meet with politicians. They meet with contractors. And they figure out, how does my faith have anything to say about the rest of life? And we have a team, thank God, he's brought a team of people on this. Glenn Pinson is our director on this. Glenn is a retired firefighter who came to our very first MAVEN Banquet in the fall of 2017, and they met with me and said, Brett, I want to help you on this. He said, I got a firefighter's pension. You don't need to pay me. I want to help build this immersive experience. And he has done an incredible job. And now we have 6 men and women who can help guide these trips. And we're almost at capacity, because each of our guides can maybe do 2 to 3 trips typically. And so, but we are getting group after group asking for these trips now. From all across the country, we have taken groups from New York, from Florida, from Colorado, from Nebraska. And these trips are so incredibly powerful. I wish I could say more about them. Okay, I know I've gone way over my time. But I'm passionate about this stuff. Because I'm passionate about the next generation. The response that we get from these trips is incredible. In fact, we want to show you a video of a youth pastor and students. It's about 5-6 minutes. In fact, Mike, I'm going to have you go to the computer, because I had probably another 40 minutes of stuff that I wanted to share. But we're going to skip forward to the video of the students, and it's slide 61. But I want you to hear from this youth pastor and his students who just went on these trips. They just went on a biblical immersive experience to Utah. And their field guide, which is Tim Stratner, he was texting me different video of the students, and it was so encouraging to hear these 15 and 16-year-old students talk about how this was the best moment of their life. and it had to do with sharing the gospel with Mormons. So I want you to hear from their own lips just the impact of this kind of trip.
This is Richard Eng. I am the family pastor at Trinity Evangelical Free Church in Holdridge, Nebraska. Our students really don't know much about their own faith. Ironically, kids that grow up in our churches or go through our youth groups, even then, very often, they might not really know very much about what we believe or certainly why we believe it. So for us, the challenge is to disciple the next generation to pass down the historic faith in a way that is meaningful and helps these kids to make their faith their own.
I grew up in a very religious household. So we would go to church on Sundays and I would go to youth group on Wednesdays, but I don't think I was ever extremely close. I knew who he was, and I had heard of stuff like the Trinity and the books. I could recite some of the books, but I didn't really know very much.
So the reason I decided to go on the Immersive Experience trip was just because I wanted to learn more about God, and I wanted to learn more about the faith in general, and I wanted to learn how I could grow closer to God, and I wanted to learn about other people and to see where they were at with their faith and to see what they really believed in. I felt like this was the perfect opportunity.
So that's where MAVEN comes in. As I look at my students and what they needed theological training. They needed to know good reasons why Christianity is true and not just useful or gonna make me happy or make me have a better life. Maybe those things will happen, maybe we'll all suffer, but we need to have good reasons why we can trust that the Bible we hold in our hands is reliable, or that Jesus rose from the dead, or that God exists. So I looked for a ministry who can help my students be equipped to answer those questions, and I landed with MAVEN. I had been following Brett Kunkel's work for a few years, so I've been kind of familiar with what he does. And he does these trips called Immersive Experiences. And that was a new phrase for me. I think of it like this. Our youth groups spend time memorizing the playbook. So you think of it like a team, any sports team, where you've got your players and they're trying to learn what the coach wants them to learn. Learn the play, learn their positioning, what they're going to do. But it ends up all being theory in our churches. Rarely do we actually encourage kids to go out onto the field and run the play. It's just theory. So what MAVEN does is it gets kids onto the field.
Before the trip, I felt really nervous. I was excited, but at the same time, I was I'm talking to strangers. I don't know how it's gonna go, and I don't want to embarrass myself in front of people.
I was really excited to get to go out and share my faith, but also I was really nervous about it because I would be going out and talking to people that I didn't know and people that don't have the same faith as me. So they wouldn't have the same thought process or anything. So it was a little nerve-wracking.
At first we were so nervous, my students were kind of avoiding, they weren't really wanting to talk to people, and we had to kind of encourage them, hey, this is why we're here. Remember, you're ready, you can do this. The Holy Spirit will bring to memory what you learned. And once they got one conversation under their belt, they were ready to go. And some of them were having conversations with members of the LDS Church for over an hour because they were just pumped. They were so ready. They wanted to dig into it.
It was with these two elders. I was with a couple of my other buddies. It lasted about an hour and a half, almost. We kind of just, I had some notes in my Bible, and they had some notes in their Book of Mormon, and we were sharing it back and forth.
One of the things that most impacted me on the trip would be when they had this one woman come in and she started talking to us about some of the things that are in the Mormon faith and how she had kind of escaped it and that she was trying to set stuff up so that she could help other people escape it. She had talked about the horrible things that happen with polygamy and how she had escaped, but she wanted to help others. And I think that kind of really stuck with me.
It really has changed the way that I do ministry It's changed the way that I think about how I do mission trips and retreats. I've got to get my students evangelizing and in the game, so to speak.
It impacted me after the trip because I knew like what I wanted to do, and like I want to get to know more about different religions and like be able to talk to more people about it.
So going on some trips, like church trips, we have like a spiritual high, but I've noticed that this is not a spiritual high. This is something that's lasted longer than anything that I've really felt before. And waking up every day, I just remember the MAVEN trip and how much I've experienced and how much I went through with that trip, and it's really, really impacted me. And I know God gave me that trip for a reason, and He gave me the opportunity to go on that trip for a reason, and I am thankful for it to this day.
So I hope if you're watching this, if you're in a position of leadership in your church or you're a student thinking about going, see what God does. This is not your typical trip. This is not your typical conference or things like that, which are all good and they have their place. But if you want to take your faith to the next level, if you want to be equipped and sent into the mission field, this is the trip for you. Conference or things like that, which are all good and they have
consequences. Right now, Brett didn't talk about this, but the MAVEN Immersive Experience, we can only do that right now partnering with a local church. But as Brett has gone out and Aaron has gone out and spoken to adults and parents, there is so many people that would love to send their student on a MAVEN Immersive Experience that cannot because their local church isn't interested in doing an immersive experience. So what we'd like to be able to do is have our first nationwide open enrollment immersive experience. But be able to do that, that costs us about $15,000. So that, you could have one big check written for $15,000 or 15 checks for $1,000 that would allow us to be able to do this and to grow the impact. MAVEN is the perfect ministry for the right time where we're at. So what we'd like to ask you to do, bring out your little booklet here. You guys have some booklets at the table. If you guys want, we'd love for you guys to give. It would be such a gracious way for you guys to come. So we would love either monthly donations. Monthly donations are great for us to have people join us and contribute to us monthly. So we're looking for monthly donors. Or even if you don't want to do a monthly donor, we'd love for a one-time gift. So on the screen also, if you're old school and you like to use an envelope and pen, you can go ahead and fill one of these out and put it in the envelope. Or on the screen, there's this newfangled thing called QR codes. You can scan that, and that'll take you to Maven True's donation part of our website. So we'd love for you to consider giving to us tonight. We appreciate you guys coming, but that would be such a huge way for us to grow the impact that Maven's able to have nationwide, because it's so needed at this time. So if you want to spend a minute or two filling out the envelope or using the QR code, we're going to have some students that are going to come around with some baskets that you guys can put those in. But we would really love for you to consider giving to Maven. We'll be right back.
As students continue to go around, we're going to wrap up our evening, and we just wanted to thank you again for joining us tonight to hear about the vision of Maven, to hear about all that we are doing, and we want to thank you by equipping you tonight. So we have a resource table out in the lobby, and we would love to gift one or two of those resources to you tonight. So please visit that table. It's mostly books. We have some MAVEN t-shirts too. But most of the books are authored by people who were at the MAVEN conference just this past March. So there's some really wonderful resources that Brett and I use, and we'd love to pass them on to you. Yeah, I said one or two. Did I say one or two resources? Okay. Okay. So thank you so much. And if you are here tonight and Brett and I haven't met you, or some of our board members, we would love to meet you before you leave tonight. So please find us to say hi. And I'm going to invite our board member, Erica Merrihew. There she is. And she's going to close our evening in prayer.
Bow your heads with me. God, I love starting every prayer off with acknowledging who you are. You are the truth. You are what is good. And you create all the beauty in the world. I love acknowledging how sovereign you are. You are in control of it all. And somehow you have called us to be ambassadors of who you are. And just when we don't feel equipped, somehow you equip us. But it starts with the youngest generation. And Lord, organizations like MAVEN exist because you have equipped all of the team players that are here tonight. A complete surrender. There's no mistake that we are in the generation that we are, in the culture that we are, in the time of the year that we are. God, I just pray and thank you for what MAVEN has done thus far, and the sky's the limit. We don't live in a box because your standard is so high. And God, I just pray that we can live up to that standard every day. Thank you for equipping the students. I have seen firsthand that excitement of the students going on those immersive experiences year after year. To be teachable, to ask questions, to seek answers, and to seek what is true. And God, I just pray for every single person here that they had eyes to see and ears to hear. And God, I just, I come to you so humbled tonight, and thank you for organizations like MAVEN. Please build them up for generations to come, and we thank you for our time together. And I pray this all in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.